Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Nora Lewis. I'm the Vice Dean for the College of Liberal and Professional Studies. I am delighted to welcome all of our LPS and ELP faculty, staff, and especially our students this afternoon. And I'd like to say a very big thank you to Penn Global and the Task Force to support Asian and Asian American students and scholars, and all of our panelists for joining us today. Before we kick things off, I know a bunch of people are still logging on, but we only have an hour and we have a lot to cover. So I wanted to just cover a couple points of protocol. You will probably notice that we are recording this session. We know that timing, especially for many of our students who are outside the United States, could be a little bit challenging. And so we're going to record this and we'll post it on our LPS YouTube channel so that those who couldn't be here with us live will still be able to see the panel and participate in that way. We're going to ask everyone to remain muted while the panel is speaking, but we are going to have time for question and answer. So please use the chat to put in your questions, and our panelists will be happy to address them as we go along, and certainly at the end during the question and answer session. I'm very delighted to introduce Scott Moore, who is co-chair of the Task Force to support Asian and Asian American students and scholars, and also director at Penn Global, and our very dear colleague, and have him kick us off today. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much, Nora. And first of all, let me just say on behalf of my task force colleagues, how grateful we are for your leadership and that of LPS, as well as the assistance of Donna Tomlinson and others within LPS for setting up today's panel discussion. As Nora kindly mentioned, my name is Scott Moore, and I'm the Director of China Programs and Strategic Initiatives in Penn Global, member of the task force. And I'm here today on behalf of our two task force co-chairs, Amy Gadsden, the Associate Vice Provost for Global Initiatives, and Kathleen Anderson, as Chief of Staff and Executive Director for Operations in the Division of Public Safety. My role in that kind of acting capacity is just to give you a quick overview of the work of the task force, who's part of it, and what brings us here to this session with you today, as well as to come back in at the very end and to moderate the Q&A portion of today's session. So as Nora mentioned, please feel free to pose questions in the chat box as we go along. I will try to filter those and kind of, if need be, group them so that we can hopefully try to address everyone's questions at the end. So this task force on support to Asian and Asian American students and scholars at Penn, or TASK for short, was originally set up in the early period of the pandemic this past spring in response to an alarming increase in anti-Asian behavior that was kind of witnessed and experienced both among members of the Penn community and in the wider community in the Philadelphia region in the United States and further afield as well. So it was quickly recognized that this was an issue and a problem that Penn did have the ability to provide some support to members of its community who were both concerned by anti-Asian behavior as well as directly experienced behind it. And so the task force was set up at the behest of our provost, Wendell Pritchett, to try to better coordinate and bring together different university resources that could be brought to bear on this problem. So initially, the task force was set up mostly with members of representatives of different university offices, like the Division of Public Safety, like Counseling and Psychological Services, that offered both opportunities for members of the Penn community to report instances of anti-Asian behavior, and also, again, just to provide a whole range of support services and resources. Over time, the membership broadened a little bit to include more faculty participants, broader range of university administrative offices, and we developed three main initiatives that we worked on really through the spring and summer that you'll hear a little bit more about later in this session. The first of those was a reporting initiative to better publicize the ways that members of the community who are affected by anti-Asian behavior can report that, both to the Division of Public Safety as well as to Penn's Office of Diversity and Inclusion. The second is an event series that was meant to raise awareness about this growing problem of anti-Asian behavior, but also its deep and long-lasting roots, something that you'll also hear a little bit more about in this session. We held a number of panel discussions throughout the spring and summer, as well as what are called restorative practice circles, which are meant to provide safe spaces either for Penn community members who are concerned about anti-Asian behavior or who have experienced it themselves to share those concerns and experiences. And those are facilitated by specialist members of something called Restorative Practices at Penn, which is part of VPUL. Then the third element of what we tried to do is a campaign called Flatten the Hate, which again, you'll hear a little bit more about in this session, and is meant, again, both to raise awareness of the problem of anti-Asian behavior, but also to demonstrate the determination of the Penn community to stand together against it. In the course of working on all these initiatives, we developed some relationships with members of the kind of broader Penn community at the school center level. And this webinar and this session today grew out of our partnership and engagement with the College of Liberal and Professional Studies. So once again, we're delighted to have the opportunity to share with you a little bit about what we've done so far, where we're thinking about going into the future, and also to get your feedback, answer your questions, and hopefully have a little bit of discussion on perhaps what more we can do and where we can go in the future with the work of the task force. One other thing that I'll say is that as part of our thinking about where to go next, we are also very much interested in connecting with students who may be interested in our work and may be interested in taking some of our early initiatives forward in new and different ways. And we would love to connect with you if that's of interest to you. And certainly that invitation also stands for anyone else here in this session, whether faculty or staff who may be interested in our work and contributing to it in the future. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us along and turn us over to the first of our kind of substantive speakers, Paige Wigginton of the Division of Public Safety Special Services. Paige, over to you.
Great, thanks, Scott. And thanks everyone for allowing us to come and talk with you today. As Scott said, I'm Paige Wigginton. I am the Senior Associate Director of Special Services, which is part of the Division of Public Safety. I'll talk a little bit more about that office, but I am representing here the whole division. I know Kathleen and Vice President Rush would love to be here. So I want to talk through some of the things that Scott mentioned as we thought about from a task force perspective and what we were actually hearing from students, scholars, faculty, and staff who had both experienced some bias-motivated incidents, but also heard from students who had experienced those too. And one of the things was kind of they weren't sure where to go with reporting what happened to them or what happened to their friend. And so one of the things that we wanted to make very clear is that while there are kind of multiple places to go, depending on what your needs might be, that we wanted to kind of streamline that a little bit for our students and faculty and staff so that they had kind of a one place or two place spot to go that felt comfortable and that they could know they would be taken seriously and so on. And so out of that came not only a letter from Vice President Rush kind of addressing the behaviors and ways to report, but also, as Scott just put in the chat, our website to be able to directly inform the folks in our community about where they can go. And one of those, of course, is to the Division of Public Safety. Any type of bias-motivated incident, whether it be kind of by Pennsylvania law, a crime or not, we understand the impact that it has on an individual. And so we want to hear about it. We want to be able to support you. And so if you go to the website, you can certainly see ways to submit experiences online. You can also always call us. One of the things that we have said kind of throughout all of this, that if anyone's safety is in question in that moment, we want you to call Penn Police if you're near Penn, or 911, wherever you may be. We want, if your safety is in question, we want to make sure that you get connected to emergency responders. The other thing that we wanted to make folks aware about is kind of being able to report through the university's diversity office as well. And so we do have a bias incident reporting form. We link to that on the website as well. You can submit both to Division of Public Safety or to the bias incident reporting form anonymously if you would like, but you can also identify yourself for future follow-up as well. So both of those are really great ways to go about reporting these types of things. And what we recognize is that reporting an incident that you or someone you know has been impacted by is one step in a longer journey of kind of processing and understanding what happened to you individually and kind of what's happening globally around this, as well as historically, as we pointed out, and we'll learn more later. And so that's where my office really kind of comes in, and we partner very extensively across the university. And so one thing that we say is that if maybe calling Division of Public Safety or putting in this incident report form online doesn't quite feel right, or you're not sure where to start with starting these conversations, that Special Services is a great place to start. You can email us at specialservices@publicsafety.upenn.edu. You can always call us. We answer the phone 24/7. It's 215-898-6600. All of those numbers and emails are on that website if you go in and check it out. And we can help you make a police report. We can help you make a bias incident report. We can help you do both. We can talk you through the different options if those don't feel right to you. If what you've experienced is really impacting you academically, emotionally, anything of that nature, then we want to make sure that you get connected to the offices around campus. And that's where our relationships, both academically with Associate Vice Provost Sharon Smith, who you'll hear from in a minute, and really kind of working through not only, let's think about this specific incident that has impacted you or a friend and you want to talk through it, but also what does it mean next week? What does it mean a month from now as we continue to kind of live in this world that is very different than it was a year ago, and having to work through the things that you've experienced, or again, your friends have experienced. I've had the pleasure of working in some of those restorative practices circles with Peter. And so we really are kind of an office that will treat you holistically, looks at this holistically, and wants to be able to help. So I think I'm getting close on time, but again, I can't stress enough, please do go to that website, give Special Services a call. We will make sure we are well connected. And so we will make sure that you are as well, into whatever it is that you might need. We see ourselves as problem solvers, so give us a buzz. Thanks.
Paige, thank you so much. And now over to Sharon Smith, Associate Vice Provost for University Life.
I think it's afternoon, so good afternoon, and thank you very much, Scott, for inviting me to be a part of this panel, and also Peter and Paige for recommending me. I understand. I've known Paige before she could call me Associate Vice Provost, so that's been a long time. It is not lost on me that this year has been extremely difficult for just the world, but also at Penn as administrators and as students. So VPUL, the Vice Provost for University Life, is a division. And I think that we have all, I don't think I'm saying it just for me, but all of you, I think we've all had to adjust and be flexible and be available and reliable and committed to our students and our community for this past year. There's no doubt about that. We've had to make that adjustment. So VPUL overall is a division that is what I would call the foremost provider of student-centered, student-facing services, from career services to the cultural center, tutoring, learning resources, crisis management, and all of that. That's kind of what the division of public VPUL is, not public safety, but we do very much partner with public safety and special services. Pat Brennan likes to describe us, that's Paige's boss, that we're connected at the waist. But the way that I talk about it, I'm going to talk about two specific areas in a minute, but the way that I talk about it, especially in this period that we've been in, any entrance that a student or a faculty or staff makes to an outreach to an office, any entrance is okay because we use what we call a multidisciplinary approach. So if Paige, and we've been working on something all weekend, believe it or not, if Paige is the entrance for a student, Paige then knows what are the other resources on campus that I need to partner with to work and support this student holistically and to navigate that student through whatever it is they're going through. So that's the piece I want you to know. And this has become extremely important during this time. Students are on Zoom all day long, morning to night. And when they are in front of someone representing the university, they see us as the university. And so they may have a question about their academics, or they may be in some kind of a crisis, or they may need something else. We are the person that they're in front of becomes the university, and we become their one-stop shop place because it's just so much, right? We know that, and they are going through that themselves. So I wanted to point that out, and that's not lost on any of us. So when I or Paige or any of us are in front of a student, we're trying to find out, how can we help you? And an example of what I say to a student is, what can I help you with? And once we talk through, oh, it sounds like you need a tutor. Instead of saying the tutoring center's number is or so forth, I might say in front of the student, can I introduce you to Valerie over in the tutoring center? Or can I introduce you to Nora over in LPS? And can I send that email right now? Because what I'm hearing is that office sounds like it's the best place to support you. But if I were to just make that recommendation to the student and they get off the phone, they may be going to another Zoom meeting, and 2 or 3 days later, oh, what did she say again? So that's one of the advice that I would give, and that's how I work with students. The one area Scott mentioned was the circles. So one area that is under my portfolio is Penn violence prevention. And that is where students can go and reach out to if they're having interpersonal relationships, if they're looking for confidential advice around what might be going on with them. That is a place that they can go. The Penn violence prevention has confidential one-on-one counseling, but they also do community education around violence. And obviously this session that we're talking about specifically are dealing with or sort of focusing on our Asian community and what they've been through during this pandemic. And again, I will repeat, it is not lost on us that we know that this is a challenge and that we want to be here and be flexible. So that is a space that they can go confidentially to talk about that. And again, if they go there, it may be that that office partners with Paige, special services to support the student, and also may bring in Peter from Potch to support a student. So again, we really do work together, and that is an office that you can go to. The second office, which many of you might be familiar with, is Student Intervention Services. And we are the 24/7 hour office that supports students day or night or wherever they are, if they're having a crisis of any kind, or if they just need some support. We are the office that sort of handhold, I call it, case manage our students who might be in crisis. And again, using a real example, if Peter gets an outreach from a student from his community about an incident around race that has impacted them and it's impacting their academics, we are responsible for notifying the school that a student is having a personal issue. We don't talk about exactly what that issue is, but they know that once we send that email to, say, the college, engineering, Wharton, that that is credible and that they need to be able to be accommodating to the student who might be experiencing some kind of distress. We don't leave the student until we I call it the case management, navigating the student until they get to where they need to be and to be a part of some kind of support. And again, that is 24/7. If something is going on at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and the point of entry is the Penn Police Special Services, they call one of my on-call staff person immediately, and we're in that moment working with the student. So those are some of the areas that I wanted to focus on. But again, remember that VPOL is a division that supports students from entry until they actually navigate. I always say that we are in the business of graduation. And so our job is to support students so that they get to graduation. And I will stop there and look forward to more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And now over to Ryan Villanueva, Assistant Director for Integration and Community Engagement in International Student and Scholar Services.
Great, thank you, Scott. And thanks everybody for being here. I'm gonna share my screen here with you so I can show some things, if that's all right. The Flatten the Hate campaign was developed by the task force in collaboration with the Penn community to increase awareness of anti-Asian behavior and hate. And partnering with students, our colleagues, people across the university demonstrates that this is something that is a responsibility for our entire community. And you can see by the participants in the campaign here and the different languages that this is something that is very important for all of us to pay attention to and to participate in. The terrible anti-Asian sentiment, the hate, bias, discrimination is something that cannot continue to go unaddressed, and is something that I'm glad that you all are here with us in learning more about and seeing how you can be a part of this. So on this next slide here, I'll show you how you can download all of these images. It's on the website that Scott shared in the chat, but there's also a link where you can download all the images and you can help us share to help spread the word. And similar to our responsibility to flatten the curve for the spike in coronavirus cases, we must also do our part in helping to flatten the hate and eventually squashing this out. My office, International Student and Scholar Services, we focus on two areas, immigration and integration for our international community. And I'd like to share some points about our integration initiatives. And this is kind of our framework for understanding integration for international students. And it's not something that ISSS can do alone. We partner with VPOL, with Sharon's division. We partner with the schools. We partner with all the resource centers across campus to ensure that we are treating students holistically. Many know our office as the immigration office, but we hope to support students in a holistic way so that all areas of their Penn experience are supported. A few integration initiatives that I'll share with you. One is called Forerunner. And this past summer that we hosted it to all new international students across the globe. And we invited current students, faculty and staff, alumni, parents to offer their insights into the Penn experience and how to make the most of it. And for any of you that are interested, you're welcome to view the recordings on the website there. And it's a very valuable initiative. Worldwide Welcome to Penn is, this was a welcome and inclusion campaign that we ran in September. And some of our colleagues in LPS and Arts and Sciences contributed to this, and we truly appreciate that. And it's just a support of our international community at this difficult time, not only related to various things related to the coronavirus pandemic, but also because of a number of immigration policies that made life harder for our international community. So This was just a demonstration. If you'd like to see more of those messages or contribute, you can reach out to us. Another initiative that we ran that we're in the pilot phase for and that we're hoping to launch soon for our international students is a virtual community that can connect them more, because we're learning as we do virtual events, it's hard to make those connections that you would in real life and have meaningful conversations and dialogue. And so we're developing this as a platform to not only connect the students together, but to connect the students with ISSS as well as campus resources, and make them sure they're aware of everything that's available to them, all the opportunities. And lastly, something that we've been doing for quite a while is called our Intercultural Leadership Program that we open to US and international students, first years, both undergraduate and graduate, through a weekend retreat and follow-up dialogues to talk about different things like intercultural communication, race, identity, privilege, how to be an active bystander. And Penn is such an amazing place because there's so many people from different cultures, from different countries, from different backgrounds and experiences. And it's important that we understand where we're coming from and where others are coming from so that we can establish meaningful relationships and make things work. In a divided world that we're living in, it's more important. I Communicate is a new initiative that we're establishing that formalizes our training that we do. Well, Dr. Altamirano, who you see in the photo there, is the director of ISSS, and we deliver different intercultural trainings across campus for schools, departments, programs, student groups, in order to become more aware of how you communicate with others and how you receive communication, and to develop more understanding across those differences. So just thank you again. Just wanted to share those initiatives and how we partner with, we're open to partnership, anything that you think would benefit this campaign, as well as any other initiatives to help build bridges. We're open to that. So thank you.
And thanks so much. And now over to Peter Van Doe, Director of the Pan-Asian American Community House at Penn.
Thanks, Scott. I want to thank Director Scott Moore, Executive Director Kathleen Anderson, and our Associate Vice Provost Amy Gaston for their leadership of the task force. And I also want to express that it's an honor to be on this panel with Sharon, Paige, Ryan, and Dr. Joe Park. As Scott mentioned, my name is Peter Van Doe. I use he, him pronouns. I serve as director for Patch at Penn, as well as I serve as a lecturer for the Asian American Studies program and as a pre-major advisor for the College of Arts and Sciences. Within TASK, I partner with Penn stakeholders, including colleagues, students, and alumni, to co-lead our program series on addressing the increase of anti-Asian violence. The title of this series is called Stopping the Hate and Starting to Heal, Living with and Through COVID-19 Pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can visit the website for this program series through this link, which I'll provide through the chat right now.
Peter, sorry, you're muted.
I'm sorry, where did we miss? Okay, so
you just shared the website.
Okay, great. So once you go through the website, you'll see a list of programs that we've done in the past, and I'll categorize them in three categories. So the first category is the panel programs, and so to date we've done at least three panel programs. One on activism, which happened earlier this summer. Second, in regards to the voices that have experienced anti-Asian violence in the past, including Japanese Americans who were interned in the 1940s, and Muslims who've been discriminated from the 1990s to the present. And then the most recent panel was with Asian American Studies, with Dr. Joe Park and many of our faculty within here at Penn called Anti-Asian Racism in the State. And those video recordings of these panels are available on our website, which I just shared through the link, tinyurl.com, Stopping Hate. And then so the next category of programs, which you've heard earlier by various members of our panel, include our restorative practice circles. And so these circle spaces are an opportunity for people with direct lived experiences of anti-Asian racism, bias, or harassment, and to give a space to share their stories and to be in community with others who have similar experiences. And more recently, or to date, we've done these circles with the faculty staff community. I believe that there were about 3 or 4 to date, and with postdocs 2 to date. And then we're working with a team of alumni, undergraduate, and graduate students to conduct future circles for undergraduate students, another circle for graduate professional students, as well as another circle for alumni community members. And so that will start more either this December or the beginning of the spring 2021 semester. As in regards to additional upcoming programs, we have a bystander training with a nonprofit organization called Hollaback. And this professional training will offer an examination of a number of ways people are harassed due to their gender, sexual orientation, sexual identity, ethnicity, and or race. And so this is an expansion of anti-Asian violence, and we wanted to provide space to include not only community members, but also aspiring allies to participate in support of those who might be impacted by some type of form of discrimination. In addition, we're working on a panel with Penn Medicine around best practices in reaching out for support around mental wellness issues. And there are in the works of inviting a guest speaker. Overall, the vision of our program series really lies in the fact that anti-Asian violence is made possible due to anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity. And anti-Blackness does happen within the Asian American communities, but we also want to highlight that, in specifically addressing the increase in anti-Asian violence, more specifically towards East Asian American appearing individuals, that there is a history of Black and indigenous and people of color solidarity and solidarity with aspiring allies within the BIPOC or Black indigenous people of color community. And those aspiring allies include those members within our task force here. Finally, I also want to mention that on the website that I provided, if you're a member of the Penn community and would like to sign up for regular announcements and updates via our listserv, please send a request to this email address, and our listserv monitors will subscribe your email address to that network. I'll provide that email there, and it's also that information is provided in our program series website. And I also want to express a gratitude to all those co-sponsoring organizations that have supported the program series, as well as will be supporting our program series in the future. And I'll provide, rather than naming all the organizations, I'll provide that list in our chat as well. And there's that. And then finally, I want to talk about my center. So Patch at Penn is a department of the Vice Provost for University Life, and one of its leaders includes Sharon Smith, which we heard earlier today. And certainly we've been around since the fall of 2000. And specifically, we've been founded due to the activism of our undergraduate students, graduate professional students, alumni, faculty, staff members, and local community partners. And ultimately, I want to say that we are not just a brick and mortar, but what really makes Patch a welcoming space would be the contributions of every single person that makes our space, as well as the stakeholders of alumni, faculty, and staff, and local community partners, past, present, and future. And they have all contributed, big or small, to Patch in some way. And what makes any space that come to life is pretty much its people, not its furniture or just its walls. And so we have really developed a space to really build community and provide support for all members of the Penn space. And we support not only undergraduate students, but graduate and professional students. We celebrate South Asian, Southeast Asian, Pacific Islander, and East Asian American cultures. And we use the verb celebrate purposely to express that we are a center that welcomes Asians, non-Asians, because everyone can celebrate and partner with us. And we also use the words Asian American communities, plural, to acknowledge the diversity of Asian Americans and to point out that Asian America is not a monolith. And so we include first-gen low-income, women, LGBTQ+, international, religions such as Muslim, lower caste, mixed race, disability, and Pacific Islander, Southeast Asian, South Asian, and East Asian perspectives, for example. We have 2 full-time staff members, Hitomi Yoshida and myself, that are here to support you around community building, leadership, and personal development. And just think of us as any member or family member or teacher that had your back. We in similar vein act in this role for you. And ultimately, Patch and is really in position to really celebrate the student life of Asian Americans on campus. And so we've done a lot in regards to support our community, and we're happy to support and act as a resource along with special services to support any students who've been impacted during this time, and also who have been experiencing the increase of any form of anti-Asian bias.
Peter, thanks so much. I want to turn to our final speaker, but before I do that, just a reminder that if you have questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to put that in the chat, and I'll try to get to that. Also, I know that we had set the end time of this session to 1 o'clock, and I know some people might have to go around that time. I'm happy to stay on a little bit after that, and if any of our, if we need to follow up with any of our panelists, I'm happy to communicate with them and try to get an answer or response to anything that we don't get to in the amount of time that we have for question and answer. But with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Josephine Park, who is Professor of English as well as Director of the Penn's Program on Asian American Studies. Professor Park, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank all the other members of the task force, especially Scott and Ryan. It's been a special pleasure to work with you. And it's always wonderful to be on a panel with Peter. So thank you all. So I want to start with the special hurt of racism. It inflicts a particular pain. I face slurs every week. That was middle school for me. It was a regular trauma, and it still pierced to the heart every single time. I continue to encounter it in racist comments in the street, in the store, and in polite society, including on our campus. So in the conversations about anti-Asian racism I've had in these months of the pandemic, I've been quite struck by hearing from several students and faculty that other people somehow are surprised that we experience this, or even sometimes don't believe it. And this is especially surprising considering our present climate, when we're seeing so much data about these fresh waves of anti-Asian racism. But there's a particular quality of anti-Asian racism that it flies under the radar, in large part because it is so widely tolerated. It is ubiquitous. So I've also heard from several students about a feeling of shame that they experience in these attacks. And this is such a debilitating combination, that there's an undercover quality to this racism and that it triggers this self-implication. I had a conversation with an Asian American faculty member of the medical school, we're talking a very fancy person, who described his own self-questioning when confronted by racist behavior. He wondered what he had done. So, I think this inward turn has incredibly pernicious effects. There's obviously real psychic damage, mental health, but it also keeps these incidents obscured. So it is vital to our health and that of the broader advancement of our culture that we share these experiences, use these reporting mechanisms, and keep a record. So the crisis of COVID, of course, makes this all very visible and felt. And I want to offer you some history, some resources that Asian American Studies can provide, not too much, which continues to do the work of recording and remembering these traumas. from the earliest arrivals of Asians to our shores. And I'll just state the obvious that we're all subjects and students of American race relations. That's what it is to be an American. And examining the understudied experience and expression of Asian America is critical to all of our advancement. So anti-Asian racism is integral to the modern formation of this country. Asians were the first immigrants to be excluded from entry, so there were no bars before the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act. That act was set to expire 10 years later. In 1892, it was renewed for another 10 years, and then every 10 years after that until the 1940s, when America needed China as an ally during World War II. So while China became America's friend, and of course Japan was its sworn enemy, and the incredible excesses of anti-Japanese sentiment in that period created concentration camps on American soil, which incarcerated, as you know, over 100,000 American-born Japanese. Those were US citizens who were effectively stripped of their rights. And again, the post-war era, I'm not really going to do too much of this history, was no less fraught for Asians in the US. Korea, Vietnam, all of those 20th century bloodbaths took place in Asia. That's where the hot wars were. And that determined, this history has determined the shape and situation of Asian America. Who's a friend, who's an enemy, who can enter, who cannot, and who can be driven out, whose rights could be stripped. So right now, we've been enduring a period of heightened nativism and outright policies of white supremacy that have actively drawn on this legacy. So the Muslim ban obviously echoes Chinese exclusion. And it's interesting that our leadership has actually talked about this history in like positive terms. It's like totally unbelievable for me. The immigration restrictions, especially targeting international students. I mean, it's been astonishing, right? And this is a crisis for universities in particular. And we can, of course, go back to the recent past of 9/11 to find very clear resonances between the surveillance and persecution of Muslims in the wake of that and the treatment of Japanese in the wake of Pearl Harbor. It's all too clear that the status of Asians within the US is determined by foreign relations. And it's a really kind of pernicious problem. And today's exhibit, of course, is the China virus. But to turn to responses to this very tough history, so Asian American Studies was born in the late 1960s, a period whose activist echoes are very clear today. And that was a time when students in particular, it took place in universities that actually in San Francisco, in which students called for racial solidarity. So that was a moment of cultural and political transformation from ethnic difference to racial alliance. And I want to underscore the distinction between being Korean American, which I am, and Asian American, which I am. One is ethnic and the other is racial. So Asian America is a racial formation in which multiple ethnic groups come together under the banner of racial solidarity. So Peter mentioned this, but Asian America is itself a vast and heterogeneous entity, but the glue that binds it is racism. It's a history of racist policies and exclusion. We've been lumped together as perpetual foreigners and subjected to continuing exclusions and demonizations. And I always say to my students that there's no natural core to Asian America. There's no territorial commonality as there is for Native America, or no shared linguistic origin. For Latinx communities, no shared trauma as an African American. Again, like those are insane simplifications, but still. But like all of these group formations, it's a conscious effort to inhabit a racial solidarity, to insist on a common cause. So the artists of the movement back in the day, in the 1960s, claimed that Asian Americans aren't born, they're made. And we choose a racial subjectivity and claim our belonging within an American coalition. So the dangers of that foreign determination, where like foreign relations, wars determine how we're treated, that makes our domestic solidarity really vital to cement our domestic standing. And this is where we can find our strength. So the formation of Asian America in the 1960s was deeply indebted to African American models, the moral force of the civil rights movement, and the resistant call of Black power. And back then they actually talked about something called yellow power, which I have a real longing for today. So Asian America was born from these models of racial solidarity and resistance. And the remarkable coalition of Black Lives Matter today is also critical and core to the sustaining our own rights. So I'll just state an obvious fact: racism in America is structured along Black and white, and Asians are enlisted into this structure. I sometimes get impatient with students, with Asian American students who talk about how much the black-white divide ignores us. It's not that we don't matter in this divide, it's that we're manipulated within it. And it's sometimes we ourselves operate the system to our advantage. So this is something we have to be aware of. And, you know, the model minority was a category explicitly designed to discipline African Americans. So if you go back to the first usage of this term in the 1960s, it was designed to valorize Chinese and American families at the expense of Black families, which were pathologized. And the drive today to dismantle affirmative action at American universities has zeroed in on the Asian American model minority as a primary means to keep out Black students and others. So, you know, the model minority is the other face of yellow peril. One is good and the other is bad, but both serve the needs of racist hierarchy. And neither is ever permitted to be fully American. So, you know, like we're shackled to these countries of origin. So how we combat anti-Asian racism is by combating systemic racism. It's really hard. And we all have to do it. It is by joining forces with Black lives. And we're witnessing this movement today. And I want to encourage us not only to take part, but to learn from the ethics and the organization and the passion of BLM to call for cultural literacy and political redress for the crisis of our community as well. We should learn to name Asian American victims of violence. We should name repressive state forces that inflict us. We should cry out against monuments of anti-Asian policy. That's happening. But, you know, this is something that we can be much more vocal about. And as we comprehend that Asian American lives are linked to Black lives and all lives, we should educate those we stand against and also those we stand with. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen, but you can educate yourself. And I always say, you know, the best defense against a kind of racist attack is to bore people, you know, with our history, you know, with the kind of history of exclusion that we live and we continue to live. Okay, I'll just say I'll close with a little thing. I mentioned at the start a faculty member in the medical school who talked about his own experiences with anti-Asian racism. And Peter was on this panel. You might remember the details better than I do, but we were all on a panel for medical students where he shared a really striking incident. There was an Asian American, I think he was a resident in the medical school, who was subject to belittling treatment by an attending physician. And a member of the nursing staff, I believe, spoke out against this. And this is really, I mean, it's no small matter to file a report against the senior member of the faculty of the medical school. You know, like we in the college are like terrified of those people, right? And so, you know, and I just want to mention that this was an African-American nurse, you know, and that kind of, and he had, this was a really important, I think, experience of solidarity for that medical student and that member of the staff. And this is the kind of solidarity we all need to engage in whenever we witness outrages like this. So that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you so much, Professor Park. So I hope that this kind of overview has given you a little bit of a sense of the task force itself, what we've tried to do, the problem as we see it, and some of the support resources that Penn has available to members of our community who have experienced anti-Asian behavior in any of the many forms that it can take place. I'd also just say again that we certainly invite comments and partnership and questions. I can also appreciate that Zoom isn't always the best format for those conversations. So I will also certainly invite anyone who would like to follow up kind of more individually to reach out to me. I'll put my email here in the chat, and I can certainly also connect you, to others. Peter had also shared the link for an email listserv that we operate that will give you notifications of different events that we host and other kind of periodic resources that we share. And I would flag again our website, which I put in the chat up above, and I will re-up that shortly. But that has links to the reporting resources that Paige mentioned at the outset, has a list of many of the different resource offices that Sharon kindly covered, the Flatten the Hate campaign that Ryan led, as well as contains links to all of our event series that Peter led and that Joe and others participated in. And I would certainly also flag that beyond the task force, as you heard from Professor Park just now, the program on Asian American Studies has an incredible wealth of expertise and its associated faculty on these issues. So I certainly encourage you to follow them as well. But I will just invite any final questions or thoughts that anyone would like to share at the moment. And would also, just as I give folks a moment to ponder that, also thank again all of our panelists.
I'm going to take a moment to say that I was supposed to be a part of the panel, but really learned so much, and especially with Dr. Park just speaking right now, I still have the chills from what you just said. So, and I was thinking about it, and I'm going to give Batsy from over in CAPS credit for some of the bullet points that I had written down about what can we do. And so I would leave with just some parting words, again, asking what can we do, knowing that we have a very vital role to play in the health and well-being of not just our students, but each other. And that it is difficult to have these conversations, but practice with another colleague to be comfortable and ready to be able to have a conversation with a student who you may want to ask permission. Can we talk about this, and ask how they're doing? And if you're not comfortable, just let them know, be honest with them, but that I actually do want to have this conversation with you. Because sometimes you ask, how are you doing? But really, you're asking, how are you doing from Dr. Park's perspective? And they don't know that, and they need to trust us. And that's how the trust begins, by acknowledging our own feelings and how we are going through this ourselves. Because the spring was extremely difficult for all of us. Personally, it was extremely difficult for me, knowing about what you guys are doing, and also all the deaths of our Black males in our community. It was extremely difficult. And I don't think that we want to be in front of a student trying to pretend that we're so strong that we're not feeling it too. And I think that that's where trust comes from. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And I would also just echo the thanks in particular to Professor Park for sharing her expertise with us. Well, if no questions or comments for us now, again, I can certainly appreciate that that Zoom isn't always the best format, and we've certainly, I think, thrown a lot out during today's session. But again, invite anyone to follow up with myself, or Ryan, I believe, also shared his email, and regardless, can certainly connect you to other members of the task force as needed. I want to again thank Nora, thank the leadership and staff of LPS for having us today, and in fact taking the initiative really in inviting us to do this session with you all. So really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you all for joining us. It is, as I said, quite a lot to throw out. But as Sharon just mentioned, I think an incredibly important invitation and reminder of the importance of thinking about these issues and having conversations about them.
Yeah, and Scott, let me just add my thank you to everyone else's, to all the members of the panel, because I think one of the things that is quite amazing about Penn is just the overwhelming number of resources we have. But how do we use those resources in the best way to make sure that we are thinking, taking action, and helping our students and supporting our community. And it really has, I will just speak personally, it has been an overwhelming year, and it's sometimes hard to know what we can do to help each other and support each other. So I very much appreciate. I think we've all learned a lot today, and we have some concrete takeaways about things we can be doing and doing better and doing more of, as well as how to connect with all of the resources that the panel has spoken about. So thank you all so very much in this week of Thanksgiving. I'm very thankful that you all took the time to be with us at LPS, and I'm really glad we can post the recording so more of our community will have access to this conversation and also be able to follow up. So thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and I think it's an excellent note to end on, to wish all here a very happy Thanksgiving.